talking about karma, part 2. I tell an interesting story about when I was a kid that really taught me a valuable lesson about karma. It's hard to understand because we have a disconnect from our past mistake and our current circumstance. But I unravel all that in this video, so check it out. So continuing my conversation on karma that I started a few days ago, and really trying to understand what karma is and how to understand it astrologically. You know, we tend to think about it falsely as a sort of linear rather than circular thing. And karma is often described as the bad stuff that we need to rise above and defeat and struggle against. Instead, karma is a wheel. It's a cycle. And the word is really inclusive and encompassing several concepts. One is like what we might call predeterminism, which are things that are, let's say, predetermined. And then the other part is often what might be called free will, which really has to do with presence and becoming present to whatever the circumstances are that you find yourself in, and then acting from a place of awareness, which introduces all sorts of creative options regardless of the circumstance. And so this whole notion of what you might call predeterminism and what often people call karma is simply the results of your past actions, what you have done before. Coming back, circling back to then show up in your life as a circumstance that you need to deal with. And what's weird is that we act as though we don't understand that this is the way life works, when this is the same process of everything that we know life to be and that we know time to be. For example, one of the easiest ways to understand this is with food. When you eat a certain kind of food, you immediately get the karma of that action. The result is immediate. Sometimes we trade off and we indulge in really tasty food and too much of it, and then we get the karma of that action in the form of getting tired and bloated. Over time, we learn that that action does not produce the result that we generally want, that it's not worth it to indulge for, 20 minutes and then pay the price for 6 hours or 8 hours when we're run down and sleepy and not having a lot of energy. So that's what you might call sort of instant karma. But the other kind of karma is really no different. It's just extended over, you might say, lifetimes, but it's less important to think about lifetimes and think of this life. When we put things into past lives and lifetimes, it seems untenable. Everything from your past life has been poured into your consciousness in this lifetime in the proper portion and the proper measure. There's no reason to look into your past lifetimes. And again, people sometimes especially ask astrologers about this in a kind of titillating way. And they'll say, is it karmic? Was this my karma from my past life and blah blah? Whatever you did in your past life is in your mind in this life. That's all. There's no reason to get all worked up about it. Your tendencies in this lifetime come from your past lives. Yes. Next question. It's just, that's the way life works. No reason to think about it. Because there's no reason to make any issue out of it. That's already the way you are. That's already your relationship with those things, like I talked about in the first video. Your relationship with power and your tendency to see it a certain way, which is like your karma with the sun. has been based on many lifetimes, and you come into this lifetime already with that tendency. And then in this lifetime, you have to evolve that and bring presence to it. So we get everything we need in each lifetime to evolve. And the knot closes behind our last lifetime. This is why we're not always aware of all the stuff that happened in our past lives, because then we couldn't manage this lifetime. So we incarnate with enough to do in this lifetime, and our past lives are in our mind in aggregate in relationship to each other. And then those karmas unfold and ripen at their proper time, based on the timing cycles and the dashas in Vedic astrology. And the thing that makes it confusing is that, unlike the example I use, like with the food, there's often a big disconnect and time lag between certain, let's use negative karmas. Certain negative karmas and their effect. For example, sometimes we get away with something. We don't get caught. And then later, when we have to deal and we have to suffer the result of that and learn it, we've forgotten what we did before. We always remember when we get the punishment. We don't forget what we did before to create it. So we see it as punishment rather than the continuum of the past lesson. I'll give you an example. I remember I've always been pretty honest. When I was younger, I went through a period of stealing, not because I really wanted to, not because I really cared about the objects, but it was mainly just kind of fun, especially when I was younger. It was just the fun of getting away with it. And I didn't do it that much. But when I was 17 and I started working, and I was a musician and very into music, and this is back when you could buy cassette tapes. Cassette tapes were the rage, and I had a cassette player in my car. And there was this store in the mall. It was so easy to steal cassette tapes. It was just very easy. And I stole probably 20 cassette tapes. I was young. I also didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't care about, stealing them. If I wanted them, I would try to steal them, and it was easy to steal them. So I stole all these cassette tapes, and I'd listen to them in my car. And probably 3 years later, what happened is my band had played at a nightclub. I was like 19. One of the first times I ever played in a nightclub. And one of the guys that helped us move equipment, bands have these guys that hang out with them because they want to hang out with the band and they want to get into the shows, and they help move the equipment. I drove one of the guys home after the gig, and the next day all my cassette tapes were gone. And I was like, what happened to them? And then I was like, oh, Clayton stole them. And I was furious at him. And of course he never owned up to it, but I know that's who stole them, because someone else told me that he steals things. And I remember very quickly going, oh, okay. I stole all of those cassette tapes, and then they were stolen from me. And even though I wasn't so much into the law of karma back then, I was wise enough to go, well, okay, I get it. I actually stole all of them, and they got stolen from me. But sometimes we don't remember, and other things happen where, for example, we mistreat someone over and over again. Relationships are a great lesson in this. We've all had relationships, and we all feel so cheated at the end when the person finally gets sick of our stuff, and all of a sudden they leave. All of a sudden they changed overnight, and they left me, or they did this, or they did that. Well, guess what? It wasn't all of a sudden. It took 10 years for it to all of a sudden break down. Relationships, not just romantic ones, but with individuals, they're nothing but a million little negotiations and, tolerances and equivocations. And over time, the relationship gets out of balance here and there, here and there. And at some point, one person gets sick of it and leaves. And the other one, oh, I never saw it coming. How could it be like this? If they're honest with themselves, they'll usually realize, okay, this is why. But many times, it's easier to not be honest with ourselves. And when this happens, we don't learn. And so let's be clear, all of these situations I'm talking about are happening with the 7 planets. 9 planets, obviously, if you include Rahu, Ketu. We have a relationship with each one of them, and the ones that are more powerful, like the planet that's in its own sign and that is more intelligent, learns from those mistakes much more easily. When we make those mistakes, we get it, we learn it, and we don't keep repeating it. And the ones that are darker, we keep making the mistakes and not recognizing our part in the problem. Again, it has no bearing on whether it's a benefic or a malefic. The malefic planets, when they're powerful, they give the wisdom of that. How to fight the good fight if it's Mars rather than waste our time in bad arguments. How to stay determined and focused if it's Saturn or whatnot. So that evolutionary process and this ratio of nuanced feeling and action in our life comes from the planets, and our karmic evolution is one of awareness and intelligence. And the ones that are weaker, it's kind of like the person in the relationship who is not listening for 10 years, and then suddenly when the person leaves and they suffer the pain of that, that's how they learn. They learn through their painful mistakes, which painful mistakes are the negative, the aggregate of ignorance of that planet hitting us all at once. And again, when the planet is in low dignity or difficulty or in a difficult house, it's hard for us to pay attention to it and to work with it, so its problems deteriorate and build up to the point to where a catastrophe happens with it, and only then will we face it. The ones that are more intelligent, we bring more skill and awareness to them naturally because they feel better in our heart and mind. And so we naturally evolve those things more easily because they're already intelligent, and they're great powers and skills that we have. And so this whole idea of predeterminism and fate and presence is really built into the whole kind of fabric of our karma. The things that are predetermined are the things you've already done. Once you eat that gallon of ice cream and it's gone in your body, you can't put it back and you can't take it out. You could make yourself vomit. Okay, but that's another action. That's another violent purging action to maybe stop yourself from going through with the maybe physical discomfort you might have to endure because of eating too much food or eating the wrong food. But once you take the action, its result is already predetermined. That's all destiny is. That's all predeterminism is. It's something you have done, coming back and framing your life, creating some circumstance. So when people say, well, you can rise above your karma, you can do this, you can do that. No, you can't. Because it's your karma. These are your actions that you've taken. God is not punishing you for anything. The predeterminate, the fate, the predeterminism, the thing that you're struggling with is a problem you created. So you can no more stop it than you can stop, again, like food is a good one. And also in the positive. Once you eat the right amount of food and the right, with the right nutrients and whatnot, you get to benefit from that. So even if every day of your life up until right now you've eaten the crappy food and the this and the that, and that's been your karma with it, well, by golly, every moment is new. And you can start right now doing something different. In fact, that's your destiny. That's the reason you're here, is to start right now doing what you know is right, rather than acting in accordance to your programming, and in particular, the negative programming, which creates the greatest pains in our life. We don't complain about the things that we do well. It only feels like we're getting all this negative karma and all this fate and heaviness because of the things we've done badly and the things that are painful. We don't complain about the things that are enjoyable. That's karma too. We don't complain about that part of it. That's also predetermined, that when you do a good thing, it's going to come back to you. And you know this as well. So one of the things I would say about understanding karma is don't be foolish about it. It's a simple, natural law that you already understand. You already see it at play everywhere. If you want to cultivate something, like if you want to, grow a flower, you have to do some work. If you ignore it, it's not going to grow. If you don't weed the garden, it's not going to grow. It's just going to, the weeds are going to overtake it and the flowers won't grow. Same is true with any relationship situation you have. If you want it to be a beautiful thing in your life, it takes effort. And it is in fact the culmination of your effort in that regard. And so the real thing to understand about karma, beyond the questions we get into with the punishment and the fate and the free will and how do I change it, is to understand this very profound truth. Karma and dharma work interchangeably. Dharma means the truth, and karma means the actions that you're taking. And those actions are the only true measure of how much intelligence you have about something. If you want to see how intelligent a person is, look at what they do, not what they say. Again, that's what karma really is. This is how karma teaches you. Because based on your actions, not your ideas, not your words, not your fantasies, not your whatever, but based on your actions, you are creating the truth. And the universe brings that truth back to you to say, see, this is the truth of who you are in this regard. You have all these ideas about the way you are in a relationship or the kind of partner you want or you deserve and blah, blah. So why doesn't it come back to you that way? Well, because this is who you really are in it. Because this is how you are as a partner. This is the kind of relationship you create. Because you are this way toward other people. That's why it keeps coming back to you. Not because you're a victim, not because everybody mistreats you, not because you're punished and blah, blah, blah. No, that's not why. Sorry. It's because this is who you are, and who you are is based on your actions. Because in other ways, your actions create beauty and fulfillment and contentment. So the truest measure, and in fact the only measure of your truth in any situation, are your actions. In fact, in many ways, you are nothing but your actions in this world. Beyond this world, you're beyond this world. So when people say, well, who are we beyond the world? And people always jump to that thing that is ungrounded because they think it's too simple. It's not simple. It's the most complicated, deep structure there is. In this world, through this body, and for all intents and purposes, everything you know as a being on earth, you are your actions. That is your karma. And your life, as you know it, revolves around the actions you take in the present, which are being framed by the actions you have taken in the past that have led to this moment and framed this moment. Because you took actions in the past that were of a certain nature, you have the life right now that you have. And based on the actions you now take, you're going to have a different kind of life in the future. And all of it is up to you. All of it is your doing. And only your doing. So this is incredibly liberating. And, you know, just like the story of the archer and the bow, where the archer has the arrow in his bow that he's about to shoot, that's the moment. Once he's let the arrow fly, he can't pull it back. Those are the actions you've already taken. That's like you've already eaten the ice cream. You had a present moment where you could have eaten something, you decided to eat a gallon of ice cream, the whole thing. You could have had a few bites, but you kept going. You shot that arrow. Now that arrow, it's going to hit its target. It's predestined at that point. But then after it hits the target, you take another arrow and you will have to then take a future action. So all of these are important in understanding the nature of karma and your actions.